I'm quitting alcohol. And today is day one of no smartphone. I'm back on the Nokia, but I'm going to be honest with you. If you saw the graph of the decline in my usage of my smartphone and a graph of the increase in usage of my laptop, you're going to see a little bit of a correlation there. You will not need to be a detective to figure out what's going on. All you need to do is flip the graph over and they'll sit on top of each other perfectly. But this is a feeling out process. This is a teething period. This is like me sneaking in a few cheeky darts the day after I quit smoking. You know, you've still quit, but 2 darts don't really count, do they? So I did go to my laptop maybe about 8 times today for no reason. Absolutely no fucking reason at all except to go and check some shit. And for those of you who are concerned you won't be able to contact me anymore, don't worry about that because I'm fucking there. I'm on board still. I have the browser on my laptop open at all times and all the pages ready to go. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, email, fucking YouTube comment section. I'm all over it. And I'm probably more likely to reply straight away because I'm typing it instead of doing it on my fucking phone. I can just bang out a reply in like 30 seconds instead of fucking around with my phone, then getting distracted midway and then forgetting. That's pretty much what happens to every single message I send. I open it, I read the message, I begin typing, I get distracted, I close it, I Google something, and then I end up replying like 2 weeks later. But not now I'm on the lappy, I can just fucking bang out the replies now. But I can tell already that I'm going to get sick of going to the laptop. There's too many things I need to do. I need to put in a password. I need to open a browser. There's fucking heaps of shit to do. Just those 10 to 15 extra seconds it takes you to open your laptop and do that shit is enough to prevent me from going to my laptop. Do you know what that means? That means my laziness is stronger than my addiction. I am weaponizing my laziness against myself. It's a fucking hassle with the laptop. I open up the laptop, I've got to press the button on the side, I've got to wait for the screen to turn on, then I have to press a button, so it takes me to the screen to put the password in, and then I've got a fucking long password that I normally fuck up about 5 times before I get it right. Then it loads, the screen pops up, I open up the browser, and then there's even a little tiny bit of a delay going from page to page, which also irritates me. So I don't think I'm going to be doing the same thing with the laptop as I was doing with my phone. I definitely won't be. It's just not as convenient. So I started using the Nokia today and it took a little while for my fucking texting thumb to heat up. I was fucking all over the shop. There's no autocorrect. The predictive texting is shit. It's almost impossible to put a fucking apostrophe in anything. But once I decided not to worry about grammar or spelling, I got back in the groove real quick. It started heating up and I started banging out some fucking texts. But I also don't see myself being a text messenger anymore either. I think I might be going back to phone calls, which no one fucking wants. Who wants a fucking phone call? No one. I don't want fucking phone calls. But I also don't want to be sending out 400 fucking text messages a day on my Nokia. I'm just going to be living in this separate world to everyone else where I'm making phone calls and everyone's trying to avoid me, which I totally fucking understand. The hardest thing today without the smartphone was definitely not being able to listen to like podcasts while I'm driving and doing shit. That was a concern because I can't listen to the fucking radio here. It's fucking unlistenable. So I just have to drive around in silence. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do about that because I do fucking enjoy listening to podcasts. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's day one. I'll iron out all these fucking kinks as we go. So anyway, that's that. And now it's Boyle Breaks History. Drug Edition. So last week I started the drug series of Boyle Breaks History with cocaine. And this week's edition is going to be one of my personal favorites. LSD. Lysergic acid diethylamide, or as the kids like to call it, acid. I would say acid is probably my 4th favorite drug, maybe higher, maybe 3rd. I haven't really thought about this. What's my first? I would say number 1's a competition between mushrooms and DMT, then probably acid and some ecstasies in there somewhere. Good speeds, good cat. That's That's fun. They're all fucking fun. Just dabble with them though. You don't need to become a fucking professional user. So anyway, LSD, the drug that simultaneously both destroyed and saved my life, was discovered in 1938 by a Swiss chemist named Albert fucking Hofmann. I think there were some ecstasy pills banging around in the early 2000s that everyone was calling Hoffmans. I never made that connection or cared, nor do I now actually. So this fucking Swiss dude, Albert H., he was fucking around with some mold on the side of like an ergot plant and discovered LSD and did nothing with it. He found it, he named it and threw it on the fucking shelf. Called it LSD 25. And there it sat on the shelf for 5 long years until in 1943, Fat Albert decided to go back and look at the molecule because he thought it was a beautiful molecule and there's something about it. These fucking scientists, they're just madmen. So when he went back to it and he was fucking around with it, he accidentally got some on his hand and then started rubbing his eyes, and the next thing you know, he's fucking tripping balls. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. About 3 or 4 years ago, I bought the web domain Trippin' Balls because I was about to start a podcast called Trippin' Balls with Boyle. And the plan was for me to take loads of hallucinogenics or whatever was on offer and get people on to tell their fucking trippin' stories. Anyway, Trippin' Balls didn't turn out quite what I thought it was going to turn out like. Trippin' Balls ended up being I'm quitting alcohol. How the mighty have fallen. Life does not always work out how you think it's going to work out. Anyway, where was I? Fat Albert was rubbing his eye, he started tripping balls, and then he realized he's onto something here. So then a little bit later on in the year, April 19, 1943, Fat Albert took the first ever intentional dose of LSD. He took 250 micrograms, which is a decent amount. 100 mics will get you feeling pretty good. 100 mics, the carpet's moving, and you're starting to think you know what Jimi Hendrix was doing. So he took 250 mics, which is a lucky amount to take, really. How do you really know how much to take? He did say 250 micrograms was the upper threshold for other alkaloids found on that ergot mold. But still, 250 mics is a tiny amount of fucking chemical. If he doubled that and took 500 mics, because no one knows how much to take, then he has a fucking real wild time on the 500 mics, loses his fucking mind, then the whole history of the fucking world's changed. No Grateful Dead, no tie-dye t-shirts, no lava lamps. So Fat Albert took that dose at the labs he was working at, and after about an hour, he's like, alright, this shit's fucked. And he called his assistant and he's like, we've got to get the fuck out of here. It was the middle of World War II as well. So imagine tripping balls in Switzerland. In the middle of World War II, you're the first guy tripping. He was probably a Jew too. Is Hoffman a Jew name? It's probably a Jew. So that would have made it even more sketchy. Even though Switzerland was like neutral. Still, it's good for the story. So he made a famous bike trip that everyone celebrates probably in Switzerland, or all the acid trippers celebrate it every year. His bike trip from the labs to his house, and then he gets to his house and he starts fucking freaking out. Even on 250 mics, he's still freaked out. He called his doctor. The doctor said, you're fine. And then Fat Albert's like, I might be fine, but your face is melting. Someone water his face. Someone stop his face melting. So after that experience, Albert Hofmann was like, we're on to something here. He told his company, and his company basically gave it to anyone who wanted it. They said, we've found this substance, help us research it. So they pretty much gave it to anyone with a white jacket. And then for like a decade and a half, it was declared like a wonder drug. It was curing alcoholism. It was helping with mental illness, epilepsy. I just totally made that one up because I couldn't think of anything else. Scratch the epilepsy one. I just made that up. But it probably did cure it anyway. Anyway, it was a wonder drug. Everyone was loving it. They were saying it's a miracle cure for fucking heaps of shit. The army started experimenting with it. The CIA started experimenting with it on the American public without their knowing in the MK Ultra experiments, which are pretty fucking interesting in themselves. I'll probably do an episode of that later on. And then it eventually makes its way out into the fucking streets with the help of this guy named Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was a Harvard psychologist and he was pretty much the fucking promoter of acid through the 60s. He was the figurehead. He was the one fucking chanting it out there with a lot of the other counterculture like figures. But if you have to choose a guy, it's Timothy Leary. He was the one throwing it around there. And I know who Timothy Leary was, but I never knew exactly what the fuck he did. And he seems to have been the problem because it was all legal up until the point the counterculture got hold of it and Timothy Leary started spouting his mouth. Timothy Leary is the guy who came up with the phrase, turn on, tune in, drop out. He's that guy. But he's like saying everyone should take acid. We need the whole fucking world to take acid, which is fair enough. They probably should. I wouldn't recommend it, but most of the world probably should. I wouldn't recommend all the world. But he starts running his mouth saying, once we get enough people to take acid, nobody's going to be fighting in your wars. No one's going to be working in your factories. And once he starts saying this shit, Richard Nixon's like, hey, we need cunts to fight in our wars and we need cunts to work in the factories. Let's make this fucking drug illegal. Let's ban it. Timothy Leary was arrested like 100 times. Nixon called him the most dangerous man in America. Then in 1971, Richard Nixon made LSD a Schedule I controlled substance, which means it's a drug with high risk of addiction and no medical use at all, which were both lies. But once that happened, all research into fucking LSD stopped. It was used widely medicinally before then. But once it was made illegal, it was fucking over. Then it just became a drug used by grommets like me to expand their mind. And that's it. If you really want to read a fucking great book about like the 60s counterculture and the whole acid thing, the best acid book I've ever read is called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe. And it has fucking everything in it. It's one of my favorite books of all time, actually. I completely forgot about it. I always wanted to reread it as well. It has Ken Casey and the Merry Pranksters in it. Ken Casey's the dude who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Hunter S. Thompson's in it. The Hells Angels in there. Neil Cassidy's in there. He's the guy who's Dean Moriarty in On the Road. If you only ever read one book about acid, that's the book. The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. I'm going to reread it. Best acid book, best acid song, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. And if you go chasing rabbits and you know you're going to fall, tell 'em a hookah smoking caterpillar has given you. Just fucking take some acid, crank that song. That's all tonight. That is another episode of Boyle Breaks History. If you're enjoying the podcast, share it around with your friends. Hit me up on social media. I'm Boyle Comedy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I'll see ya the fuck later.